So much has happened since I last saw you.
Hello, I'm the Lazy Critic, and I think The Orphanage deserves to be seen by so many more people. It's a movie that has a tragic story, but is told in a way that tricks people into thinking this is just another ghost story. It left a lasting impression on me because of how well the horror elements parallel with the actual story. The first time I watched it, I was distracted by the jump scares and thought that's all this movie had to offer. The story's buildup is intense, and through a carefully detailed story structure written by Sergio G. Sanchez, the story acted as a parallel to any of the scary moments, complementing each other as the movie progresses. As we learn more about Laura and her family, the movie starts to lean into the jump scares and starts having them appear more frequently. The more frequent the jump scares got, the closer we as an audience got to the end of the movie. The final reveal is something I didn't see coming, and thanks to J.A. Bayona understanding the quality of the script before him, he was able to match every single plot element with cinematic moments and beautiful cinematography, which all just leads to the grand reveal and allowed for his audience to want to rewatch the movie. We are rewarded in the rewatchings by catching moments missed the first time around when we were being distracted by the jump scares. Knowing the twist ending only enhances the movie and makes it just that much sadder.
Everything around her begins to vanish.
The Orphanage is set in Spain, where Laura and her husband move into their old childhood orphanage with their adopted son in hopes to give it a grand reopening. However, her family is quickly forced into a paranormal situation, and plans for the grand reopening soon come to a halt. Laura searches for answers she knows she can only find within the orphanage. I think she comes back to this orphanage to give it a grand reopening as a way to give back the love that was missing in her childhood. This orphanage was the perfect opportunity for her to give others what she didn't have growing up. Laura's character appears to be very soft at the beginning of the movie. She's literally befriending a stranger she's never met before who just knocked on her door one day. But as the movie progresses, she starts to give off strength. From the very moment of Simon's disappearance, she is seen as a character who will do whatever needs to be done to find her child. Within those moments, I grew attached to her, rooting for her to find Simon, and by doing so, the big mystery Laura and her family are forced to be a part of starts to be less scary and starts to be more tragic than anything else. By the time we find out who this is, I was just as desperate for answers as Laura was, wishing and hoping Simon was just part of some sort of paranormal situation that can be resolved once the ghosts aren't mad anymore, which is far from what actually happened. The true horror in The Orphanage comes from the narrative. All of the terror sprinkled throughout the movie just adds to this dramatic tragedy and is used to distract the audience from what's actually going on. It proves that there are worse things out there than a broken finger. The blood and horror scene is nothing compared to the trauma all these characters are facing. I can empathize with how Laura must have been feeling towards the end of the movie. She is going through a lifetime's worth of pain and terror, hoping her son is not dead. It's like she's falling apart but refuses to crumble because there's still a chance she can find Simon. First of all, this little ghost kid who has been terrorizing Laura since she came back to the orphanage is actually this woman's son from the beginning. Turns out Tomas was an orphan around the same time Laura was. Shortly after she was adopted, some of the other kids after the orphanage stole the mask of Tomas, revealing his face deformity, and embarrassed him so much to the point where he runs away, hides in a cave right by the ocean, and drowns. The whole reason Tomas is scared right here is because the last time someone tried to take off his mask, he was ridiculed to death. The tragedy of the past does not stop there. This lady from the beginning is actually the mother of Tomas, and because she thought these kids were responsible for his death, she decides to poison them. With the amount of death and trauma that flows through the orphanage, I can understand why Laura thought that the next logical step would be to hire a medium. She's desperate for any kind of answer to find out where Simon is and get him back. After hearing this story about Tomas, she starts to think that the ghost had something to do with all of this. I do believe there are things in this world that can't be explained, so for me watching this paranormal narrative, it wasn't hard for me to follow her logic. And I think that's why I am so attached to Laura and why I feel so deeply sad for her, because I can only imagine what she must have been feeling when she finds out the truth. So what actually happened to Simon on the night of his disappearance? Laura was searching for him, and while she was moving around some construction supplies, they just so happened to block an entrance to a secret room where Simon was hiding after she yelled at him earlier that day. The crash Laura heard that night was not actually the paranormal world trying to communicate with her. It was actually Simon trying to get out, but fell to his death instead. Laura is ridden with guilt and overdoses on sleeping pills and wakes up in this limbo ghost world. She is seen fulfilling her first wish from the beginning of the movie, giving love to children who are missing it in their lives. The movie ends with her telling the ghost children a story, and Simone is cradled in her arms, alive and well. The last image we are left with is Laura's smile. Yet it should not be confused with this being a happy ending. This isn't just another horror movie.
The greed to learn, the greed to not see film only as you see it, but to see how other people see it.
Similar to a lot of the other movies Guillermo del Toro is part of, horror elements are there as parallels to the narrative, allowing for comparisons to be made, having the audience question, what are we actually supposed to be scared of? The ghosts that haunt the orphanage? Or the fact that young children are raised in a society where the possibility of someone only being slightly different from you can be ridiculed to death, and their mother finding the need to take vengeance on these kids who are only just products of the world that raised them. I can understand why Guillermo del Toro believed in this movie so much, and I am right here with him. I gravitate towards movies that are more psychological in their horror rather than having something jump out at me. I love The Orphanage, and I think you should give it a chance. My birthday was on April 1st, so if you want to give me a present, watch this movie. I appreciate you listening to my rant. I'm the Lazy Critic, and if you want more recommendations on movies, TV shows, or anime, please like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.